all, and welcome to Mayor, Manager, Officer, where we listen and learn from local leaders from throughout the Bay Area. My name is Kristen Petersen, and I'm the Senior Local Government Specialist for the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. My guest today is Yvette Brooks. She's an Executive Assistant and MIS Technician with the Santa Cruz County Office of Education, who founded a nonprofit program called Teens Teaching Teens, which received national attention on The Oprah Winfrey Show. Yvette has worked tirelessly on behalf of children and families in her community by advocating for out-of-school time programs during the COVID-19 pandemic and serving on the Childhood Advisory Council. And like me, Yvette is one other thing, a mayor of Capitola. I proudly turned over the gavel to her this past December, and I'm a big fan of her energy and enthusiasm, as well as her commitment to serving our community. Yvette, thanks for coming on to Mayor, Manager, Officer.
Great. Thank you so much.
So here's the big question for any of us. Why did you run for office? Tell us about how you got to this point.
So the reason I ran was because of the occurrences in 2016 when the president at the time, Trump, was elected. I just so happened to be the campaign manager for another elected, or she became the unelected in 2016, Martine Watkins for Santa Cruz. And, you know, there was just so much momentum going on after President Trump's election for women to get more involved. And there was a moment in time when another wonderful councilwoman came up to me, that just so happens to be Kristen, yourself, who came to me and said, "Hey, Yvette, have you ever thought about running? You've been involved, you've participated in lots of other organizations and outreach, and you asked me to run." And that actually spearheaded what 2018 became when I actually ran and successfully won.
And I'm so glad that you did. It's been such a pleasure working with you on council. So now you've been mayor for about 3 months. From former mayor to current mayor, what's something you didn't expect about the job that you've had to learn?
Yeah, the term for mayor is only one short year. And the thing about it that I've realized is that to become effective, in order to really take a stand on things, it's really hard and it takes a lot of time. And so for me, I'm trying to constantly learn, constantly trying to study, constantly trying to problem solve while trying to create good policy, while trying to create movement and shifts and things that are important to me in our community. And so for me, that's been something I've learned in just this short couple of months.
Well, you make it look so easy with all the work that you do and you know all the great things that you're doing in your time as mayor. So as you mentioned, the term is only one short year. So what do you want the community to remember about your time as mayor?
Yeah, so, you know, I came out with 3 priorities, and the first one is to focus on strategic budget planning. So that means examining our multi-year projections as we move past the pandemic, creating a COVID safety fund to support our city just in case something else happens. I know we're all super optimistic, but putting this set aside, being proactive in that, and then applying for grants to offset discretionary spending. So that's one of my goals. My second goal is to support families and their children. And by that, I mean utilizing our dedicated children's fund, partnering with our local school district and collaborating on projects, and applying for grant funding for our tobacco advocacy endeavors. And then my third priority is to ensure policies created with an equity lens. So again, for me, that means the code of conduct policy, something that we've never seen before in terms of how not just only council leads our meetings, but our commission. In addition to that, having council and staff trained on implicit bias. And lastly, supporting conversations and action around the process of policy making within our police department. So those are the 3 kind of goals, big ones, if you to try to achieve in a year, but you know, it doesn't end there. I get to continue my term on council afterwards for another year. So yeah, I'm just really excited about it.
So you mentioned your work with children and families. You mentioned your work with tobacco prevention advocacy. And I'm sure that a lot of that kind of work that you're doing now comes from your pre-politics life and the work that you've done with children and families and the Office of Education. What other lessons did you learn in your pre-politics life that you use now as a mayor and a council member?
Yeah, there's so much to that question, Kristen. I mean, I immediately think back to just growing up in San Jose and being surrounded by diversity. I think about uh, running a nonprofit in high school that you mentioned earlier. I think about working in the restaurant business. I think about just my current job as an employee at the Santa Cruz County Office of Education for the last decade. And all of those experience, all those pre-political experiences that I've had, what's the same about all of them is that they've created and helped me understand community. Each one of those experiences created, uh, gave me the opportunity to learn about different communities, to learn about different community members, and just people that are not like me. So those political experiences really help pave the way for me when we create policy at the city level, or I'm working on other things collaboratively with the other mayors of the four cities in our county. I'm really able to use that experience, that lens of my previous experiences to add to those conversations, right? To bring forward, um, just like as I mentioned, this idea of creating policy with this equity lens.
Yeah, absolutely. And clearly, all those experiences serve you well. Um, and I know that in discussing our pre political experiences, you and I have had conversations before about how quite often women are afraid to step into these leadership roles on city council or other elected offices because they're afraid that they're not qualified or they don't have the right background or the right job. And you and I have discussed how really, as long as you care about your community or whatever job you have or whatever background you have, that comes with you into this role. You and I are on a council this year that is just this year experiencing the first time that there's been a female majority on the council body. What do you think that says? How and why does that matter? What impact do you think it has on our community?
Well, why it matters is because we're making history, right? This is the first ever. That's mind blowing to me that we are still struggling. We're still fighting the good fight, for equity, right? And for fairness, and to have a voice on these platforms. And so it becomes a reality when other women in power begin to open doors for others, like you did for me. And once we start doing that, the real impact it has is that the road gets easier. The path of it becomes the path of least resistance. And more so, it allows us to think about the systems in place that we have. So for me, having to work a full-time job just like you, Kristen, and being a mom of a 6-year-old and trying to balance all of that, but to really be able to participate in my community and on council, all has its own nuances. And so we have to think about what's going to make it easier for women. Do we really have to travel 4 hours away for one meeting when we're looking at these new types of efficiencies? And this is just something that we can work on to make it more feasible for more women to get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And along with the two of us and our fellow councilwoman, Margot Kaiser, being the first time that we've had a female majority on the city council, you're also breaking ground in other ways. And so, one of our priorities here at the leadership group is racial justice and equity. And as part of that work, we aim to address the need to see more people of color in leadership positions in the private sector. But you yourself are the first Hispanic mayor in the city of Capitola, and you've worked to amplify the leadership of other leaders and people of color in our community. So, how has your experience informed the way you serve? What advice do you have for other potential leaders of color that are looking to step up and run for office?
Well, that is a really great question. We're struggling with that here in the city of Capitola on how to engage more people. How do we get more people involved? The first thing I can think of is network. You need to start building a network. You need to start getting out there and talking to people. I mentioned earlier about my experience. I love that pre-political life. Living those life experiences, working in an industry that gives back, be it volunteering, working in the restaurant field, working with children, working just with other people really adds to that. And that's part of that networking process. If you asked me this 20 years ago, I would have been a completely different person. I was a completely different person, right? And, today's experiences will only be one piece of who you are and how you serve when you become an elected. So a lot of people feel dissuaded in moving forward because of those things, because they did X, Y, or Z in their past, or because they didn't study this in college or whatever it may be. And as I think I'm constantly asked for my opinion about things, but that's just it. It's just like one opinion, right? And as a leader, we have to think about everyone else. And that's what's so important about living your life, really truly gaining insight of life's experiences. And then as you develop into the person you want to become, you know, and you're ready, then you move forward and you bring others along with you and you reach out to the people that helped you and you look around you just like you did for me, Kristen, and say, come on, come along with me and let's do this together. And that's how you do it. You have to finally take the leap and and become the person you really want to.
You've mentioned that I've done this for you, but really you've done this for me as well. You've always been supportive of me and the other female leaders and leaders of color in this community, and we're really lucky to kind of have that kind of solidarity and partnership and teamwork, and to be kind of a dynamic duo, if you will. So I'm gonna wrap it up with a little bit of a lighter question. So here in Capitola, we have excellent restaurants, Shadowbrook and Zelda's and Margaritaville, and we got to give a shout out to Andy at the Brit. There's so many, but if you could only eat one at one restaurant for the rest of your life, which one would you pick?
Oh man, is this a political question? I feel like this could be heated in such a small community as they all the business owners are listening in. I feel like they're gonna be calling me and be like, Yvette, why didn't you say mine? I love Mexican food. I'm Hispanic. I come from a background, and if it was like the last food I had to eat, I would eat at Margaritaville just for that. So, and plus I like margaritas. So
The margaritas, the tacos, and the views. Yeah, you can't really beat
yeah.
that. Well, Capitola Mayor Yvette Brooks, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure listening and learning from you. We look forward to following all your continued good work in our community.
Thank you so much, Kristen, for having me. It's been my pleasure.
And thank you all for tuning in to Mayor Manager Officer. Be sure to like and subscribe for more conversations like this. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletter, BEAR, the Bay Area Intelligence Report. Until next time.